Alright, so today, we're gonna be talking about and going over the latest patch notes for the upcoming update in NIKKE. I'm not going to be talking about every single thing in this patch notes because I mainly want to talk about the new characters. So without wasting any more of your time, let's talk about the first character, Anise Sparkling Summer. So the new variant for Anise is going to be a support character, a shotgun user. She is also going to have the electric element, and she is going to be from the Tetra line of units. Now moving on to her description, Anise Sparkling Summer is a NIKKE who becomes stronger while assisting Electric Code NIKKE's attacks. And then the next part says that her burst skill, Sparkling Wave, increases damage as strong element and proves to be even more effective when the enemy belongs to the water code. So just by looking at that, she is going to be a support character whose main focus is increasing your team's damage. But the one thing that is going to throw off a lot of people is the fact that Anise Sparkling Summer is limited when it comes to elements and which enemy she is actually good against. You would probably know by now that this is a recurring theme when it comes to the limited characters in NIKKE. When you take a look at Blue Ocean Neon and Big Goddess Mary, these two characters are both good in their own ways, but the one thing that is holding them back is the fact that their skills are actually limited in terms of element. When you take a look at Blue Ocean Neon's skill 2, it's only going to affect herself, and it's only going to increase the damage as strong element, which means that if the enemy is not weak against water, this will not be useful at all. And then you also have her skill 1, and this only increases the damage for enemy parts. So if you're up against enemies that don't have breakable parts at all, then this ability is practically useless. Not only that, she is also limited in her burst because the second effect only activates when the target has the fire code. So you can say that the same thing is pretty much happening with Anise Sparkling Summer, because when you take a look at her description, it doesn't seem like she is going to provide more utility outside of the offensive buffs. So first, she becomes stronger, so this means that she is going to get a buff whenever she is assisting Electric Code NIKKE's attacks. So just from this one, she is already limited in terms of which characters she can actually buff. And then when you take a look at the second description, her burst skill, Sparkling Wave, increases damage as strong element. So the same thing with Blue Ocean Neon, this will only be effective if your enemy is actually weak against your element. So the most likely case is that your characters are electric and you're up against an enemy that has the water code, because it just makes a lot of sense from this and as well as the second condition. So what do I think about characters being limited in terms of element and what type of enemy they're only good against? Well, for one, I have said this a lot of times in my previous videos. And basically how I see this is basically the design principle of Shift Up. They are open to the idea of limited characters, but at the same time, they also don't want those characters to be very broken. So for them to be able to accomplish that, they have to make characters that are only good in specific scenarios. Which in this case for Anise Sparkling Summer, I can see her being really good against the Mother Whale boss, because that boss has the water type, so Electric Code NIKKE's will be very effective. Adding on the fact that she is going to increase the damage for Electric Code characters, that alone will further increase her value in that boss fight. And I'm assuming that a lot of you have fought that boss fight already, and if you have, you would know how much damage you need to actually take out all of the enemies on the field. So having someone who can buff your damage and also brings utility that is fit for that boss fight is actually very valuable. I can realistically see Anise Sparkling Summer ending up like Blue Ocean Neon, where these two characters are not really that good, but in a specific boss fight, they will be very useful. And before we move on, I just want to go back to the topic of Shift Up's design principle when it comes to limited time characters. I did mention that they make limited time characters only good for specific scenarios. But the reason for that is not only for balance, but if you look at it from a business standpoint, that is also the best way to sell characters. Because imagine if they keep releasing characters, in this case support characters, that are on the same level and the same flexibility as Litter and Dorothy. Eventually, you will have enough characters of that type to not need to pull for any character in the future. So if you're a gacha company, that is not something that you would want to happen. You would want your players to keep on pulling for characters because that's how you get your income. That's how you pay your employees, that's how you run the servers, and all of the other things that comes with running a gacha game. Sometimes I get a lot of hate from saying this, but I'm only telling you how things are. I'm not necessarily saying how things should be, because that is just the reality. They have to generate some sort of income, and the best way to make sure that the income keeps on flowing is to incentivize players to keep on spending on new characters. But what do I know? Maybe that is a hot take. Moving on, let's talk about Helm Aquamarine. She is going to be an attacker, she will be using an assault rifle weapon, she has the iron element, and she is going to be from the Elysian line of units. So she basically enables her squad to utilize their burst skills more frequently. She is probably going to decrease the cooldown for your team's burst, but it's also possible that she is going to increase the burst gauge loading speed for your team. But if you ask me, I would go with the first one. Extra effects take place when she attacks electric code enemies, maximizing the squad's attack power. So taking a look at her description, what you can take from this is obviously she is going to increase the damage for your team, and she is also going to decrease the cooldown for your bursts. And the actual cool thing is that it is very similar to the regular Helm, where the regular Helm and her variant are both classified as attackers, but when you take a look at their kit, you can pretty much consider them to be supports. When it comes to when she is actually useful, I can only think of one boss, and that is Stormbringer. Stormbringer has the electric element, and that boss is weak against iron types. So depending on a few factors, Helm Aquamarine has the potential to be really good against that. The two main things that can make or break these characters, well actually make that three. So the three main things that will make or break these characters are the skill values, skill condition, and their burst types. Because when it comes to Anise Sparkling Summer, she is going to be a bad character if she ends up being a burst type 1. Because the burst type 1 category is very stacked, and based on her description, I can already see her being a character that is hard to recommend over the other burst 1 characters that we have. So I would say that making her a burst type 2 character would put her in the better position, because you will be able to get the additional damage from her kit along with the other good buffs from the top tier burst 1 characters. So hopefully, she ends up being a burst type 2 character instead of a burst 1. And then for Helm Aquamarine, I would honestly want her to be a burst type 3 character. I want her to be a burst type 3 not only because for my personal preference, but because if you ask me, I think that it's the most likely case that she is going to be in. She is an attacker, but her kit is pretty much like a support, and that is very similar to the regular Helm. So just by probabilities, and I would say just from the similarities between the two, I would say that Helm Aquamarine is going to be a burst type 3. So for Anise, hopefully she ends up being a burst type 2, so that she's not conflicting with the burst 1 characters that are top tier. And then for Helm, she will probably be a burst type 3. And lastly, we have another character, and this actually caught me by surprise. For the last one, we have Anchor, and she is going to be a free SR character. So just like the other SR characters that we've got, you will be able to max limit break this character. So if you are someone who just started playing, this will be really useful for you. So Anchor possesses the ability to destroy projectiles. She can destroy a large number of projectiles with MDS, which increases damage against projectiles, and CIWS, which contributes to overall attacks. And then of course Anchor is going to be a defender, a rocket launcher user, she will have the wind element, and she is also going to be from the Elysian line of units. Her kit is actually very unique because we haven't seen any character that is mainly built to counter projectiles. Yes, we have characters like Agent T who increases damage against projectiles, but Anchor seems like a character that is mainly focused on that, which is actually very interesting. So even though she is an SR character, hopefully she is good enough to the point where you can actually use her as a niche pick just in case you need a character to deal with projectiles from the bosses. So yeah, let me know what you think about these characters, and if this patch notes actually changed your mind about pulling for them, or are you still going to pull for the characters that you like? I would love to hear your thoughts, and as always, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.